What is up, IDP Army? Welcome to Defense Matters, where we are talking mostly IDP, all fantasy football. As always, I'm your host today, Jordan Rains. If you're on Twitter, that's at 50 Shades of Drunk. I'm tweeting and I'm fleeting these days, guys. So hop on the Twitter train if you're not already there. It's a good time. Post some good content over there. I try to be on there at least 2 or 3 times a day, posting a stat nugget or a thought or observation about IDP, or commenting on the news, or just the overall fantasy football conversation. So part of that. You guys can also find my written work at dynastynerds.com. I'm doing a monthly article right now. Once the off season gets here, I'm going to write a lot more. And also on their YouTube channel, I've got a show, In My Defense, which just started 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's also just once a month right now, but that will be going probably closer to weekly, 3 or 4 times a month, probably once the off season hits. Just breaking down all the dynasty information that's IDP relevant over there for them. So go on over there, subscribe to that channel, and you guys can catch me over there as well. Subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the bell. Comment. I'm always trying to be on here, myself and Steve, trying to interact with people. So appreciate that. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, obviously subscribe, rate, review. Love that. It's the only thing I ask of you guys to do for the show. It helps a lot with exposure and, just getting our name out there and getting IDP, in front of more people. So you guys can do that for me. I will do this for you. Again, I'm happy to be here. Excited to give you guys some week 11 rankings, notes and comments on the overall, kind of fantasy week at large. No real big announcements really this week. Just to know, we're getting close to the playoffs. I know I'm fighting. I'm sure some of you guys and gals are fighting pretty hard too. Don't give up the faith. This is what we're here for. When it's gone, it's going to be over pretty soon, and we're going to miss it. So play out every week, every game. You never know. All right, so let's go ahead and go over the top scores from this last week, week 10. Top scorer at defensive line this last week was TJ Watt. He had 28 points in IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Top scorer at linebacker, Leonard Floyd. Crazy game. He had 40 points. We'll talk about him a little bit more soon. And then Jamal Adams at defensive back with 33 points. So coming through with a monster week. I think it's only second week back from the injury. So that was good to see. He blew it up when he put himself right back up there. So good to see that. Guys, obviously, IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Just a quick breakdown review. But 1-point plays are quarterback hits and assisted tackles. 2-point plays are tackles for loss, solo tackles. 3-point plays are passes defended, fumble recoveries, forced fumbles, blocked kicks. And then your 6-point plays are sacks, interceptions, and then IDP touchdowns. And when IDP 1-2-3 is at its best, you will include, interception return yards, sack yards, and fumble recovery yards if you can, if your platform allows that, if your league mates want to do that. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion. So those were the top scorers. Again, I'll go over them real quick. Defensive line, TJ Watt, 28 points. Leonard Floyd at linebacker, he had 40 points this last week. And then Jamal Adams with 33 points for the defensive backs. So let's talk about some news and some injuries, which, speaking of Jamal Adams, he did leave that game with a shoulder injury, went to the locker room, was evaluated, returned to the game, though. So he seemed to be fine. It's wheels up for Jamal Adams. Kyle Van Noy suffered a hip injury in this game this last week for the Dolphins. He left the game, but he as well returned to action. So I think his snaps were down a little bit. Maybe that was because of the injury. Devondre Campbell, another linebacker here, suffered a calf injury and left the game for the Arizona Cardinals. This was a Thursday night football game situation, so you're definitely gonna want to know what his situation is. Let me look real quick. He's still questionable, it looks like. Yeah, he's still just questionable right now. So you'll just have to watch. That's as of 2 hours ago from this recording, which is Wednesday night. It's 8 o'clock Central. So you'll want to check that out. He's been a great linebacker for you this year. I mean, his last 3 games, 6 points, 21 points, 15 points. So he's been a solid linebacker with a little bit of upside. But if he is not going to suit up, this might be the Isaiah Simmons breakout game. So Thursday night game, watch out for that. There'll be a lot of eyes on that game. It will be interesting to see how that plays out. But again, if Campbell is playing, though, you're going to be playing him pretty confidently as a linebacker too this week. Let's see here. And then Taylor Rapp, this is a pretty big one. He exited the game and did not return for the Rams. They put him on IR as of yesterday, I believe. So Jordan Fuller actually just came back off of the IR. So these guys have just been trading spots all season, either on the field, off the field. if one was playing, the other one's on IR or vice versa. So Taylor Rapp, it's his turn. He tagged out. He's headed to the IR with the injury. Fuller's in. He played really well whenever he was starting early in the season. So Fuller for me, he could be a low-end DB1, but I'm looking at him more as a DB2 right now. So let's see here. All right, let's go over some of the notes from the things this week that I kind of saw this past week. Only 2 defensive line players in week 10 scored over 20 points, which is kind of crazy. It was a really, really quiet week for defensive line. Here's some big names that put in up under 6 points. All these players put up under 6. All right. Cameron Jordan, Bradley Chubb, Brian Burns, Trey Hendrickson, Chase Young, Cameron Hayward, Yannick Ngakoue, Josh Allen, Eric Armstead, Jeffrey Simmons, Stephon Tuitt, Aaron Donald, Montez Sweat, and Carlos Dunlip. All those defensive linemen put up under 6 points this week. That's 5 or below. That's absolute insanity. But that's the week. If it felt down for you guys, if the scoring felt down on your defensive line, it's because it was, especially from a lot of your guys that you're counting on week in and week out. They just didn't perform this week. But, a lot of these guys, you playing with confidence every week. You just caught that bad week. And a lot of, likelihood is your opponent caught a bad week too. I mean, if you had Bradley Chubb up against Brian Burns, I mean, everybody lost in this week's situation with defensive line. Unless you have TJ Watt, which I do because I've been and you should too if you've been listening to me, because TJ Watt was worth it even when he was a linebacker. Anyway, I'm talking about my sleeper heads right now. All right, let's see here. Some snap stuff. Montez Sweat, his snaps did dip this week, went to 64% this week. Chase Young played 83%. Chase Young really hasn't been doing much since the first week of the season, unfortunately. But Montez Sweat has more pressures. He has more sacks. He has more everything. But for whatever reason, his snaps were down this past week. Not really sure what that was about. But I'm still playing him every week as a DL1, low-end 1, high-end DL2 for me at worst. Yannick Ngakoue, his snaps are down since moving from the Vikings to Baltimore, down to 43% this last week. This one's just an LOL FU. Chase Winovich, after basically going from a full-time player, went all the way down to, what is he playing, like 20 snaps in 1 week, and then he played the next week like 14, and the next week like 7. He just ghosted completely out. This last week, week 10, plays 98% of snaps. So I mean, talk about a complete nightmare for fantasy football. A guy, 1 week he can literally play 5 or 6 snaps, and the next week he can play 65. So I don't really know what to tell you to do with Chase Winovich. Hold on, trade, whatever. He's talented, and he's pretty much all they have right now. So I can't really play him. I mean, you're literally rolling the dice if you're playing Chase Winovich right now. He might not even play, or he might play 100% of snaps. Carlos Dunlip, again, this week, after I think last week he took 68% of the snaps with his first week with the Seahawks. This week he was up to 73% of snaps. Again, he did not match his production. All he had was 1 quarterback hit this week. But like I said, a lot of defensive linemen did not perform this week, so it wasn't just him. 73% of snaps, you're still rolling them out there week in and week out. And then Sam Hubbard, first game back from the IR, he played 62% of snaps. So you're going to want to, keep an eye on Sam Hubbard. You can probably play him as an IDP flex this next week. I'd like to see his snaps jump up into like the 70 range, 80 range. But odds are you're dealing with some bye week issues, as we all are at this point in the season. So you're probably trotting out Sam Hubbard. And at the end of the day, I mean, he probably won't let you down that bad, even if he lets you down, because he has such a good tackle floor. So let's move to the linebacker notes quickly. Like I said, Kyle Van Noy earlier left the game. He ended up only playing 60% of the snaps. Jerome Baker also only 60% of the snaps for Miami Dolphins this last week. I mean, you can roll these guys out there. I mean, these are other guys where there are snap situations up and down, week in and week out. They're still performing about half the time, maybe a little more in Jerome Baker's case. So you're still going to play them pretty much every week, in my opinion, especially if you're playing in an 8, 9, 10, 11 IDP league. There's no reason you would bench guys like this. Jerome Baker has been super productive this year, even though the snaps are, kind of up and down and up and down. He's still, where is he at right now in the year? He's still pretty comfortably in the top 25 linebackers from what I'm looking at here. So You're going to play him. Kyle Van Noy, he's missed a little bit of time again because of the injury, so maybe you're a little less likely on him, but he's had weeks where he's gone out and he has played 100% of snaps. So, this, I don't know if you can really chalk this last week up to anything other than, it is what it is. Another kind of situation like the Patriots. I'm looking here again real quick. Jerome Baker's linebacker 21 on the season. So, you're not going to sit him. I don't care even if he is playing 60% of snaps this week. Don't sit him. Don't be silly because you don't know that's what's going to happen this week. Perfect example, Kaiser White, next guy I'm talking about here, 81% of snaps this week. Kenneth Murray, 90% this last week in week 10. The week before that, Kaiser White was down to like 50% of snaps. And Kenneth Murray was up to 100. So things change. You just roll with the known talent. You roll with the known production. You roll with the guys who have got the points to get them in that conversation to begin with. Kaiser White, Kenneth Murray are still going to be starting both of them. Like I said, Jerome Baker, Kyle Van Noy. You're not going to bank on 100% of snaps. You can't do that, but you can bank on production because these guys are starters on their team or at least playing most of the snaps. This is a big one. Leonard Floyd, as I said earlier, biggest linebacker scorer of the week in IDP 1-2-3 scoring and probably any scoring basically. Played 91% of the snaps. Big games 2 of the last 3 weeks. He's really not somebody I feel super comfortable with in my lineup right now, unless it's a deep dynasty, which I have him on a couple of deep dynasty rosters, but again, I don't know if I can buy into Leonard Floyd as like, what is this, year 5, or 4, 5, 6 breakout. I know it did happen for Dante Fowler this last year when he was with the Rams and he got himself a little piece of change when he left that team. So maybe Leonard Floyd is in that same situation. But, the snaps are there. He's a big play upside. He's definitely boom bust. I'm probably playing him. If you are playing him, you're playing him as a linebacker 4, in that area as a high upside guy. Pittsburgh linebacker snaps. I'm sure you guys, if you're on Twitter or anywhere, this is a hot topic, but Robert Spillane, 69%, Vince Williams, 52%, Avery Williamson, 17%. Avery Williamson just got there. I'm not really sure how this is going to all turn out, but they did trade for Williamson. Spillane's been playing well, but so has Vince Williams. So this is a group that I'm a little more hesitant to play people out of. If I am going to play anybody in this group, it's going to be the two who have been there the longest, Vince Williams and Spillane, obviously. And we'll see if Williamson can work his way onto the field quickly. Patrick Queen, 97% of snaps this week. You love to see that. Malik Harrison, interesting, 84% of snaps. Didn't do a whole hell of a lot necessarily with it, but that was good to see. And maybe if that continues to be the case, he could become a viable weekly starter. Eric Wilson, wanted to point this out. Currently linebacker 7 on the season. And I tweeted this out the other day, but he's having a really good season, guys. Like, not just like there's that Eric Wilson guy again. Like, he's a top 7 linebacker right now. He's linebacker 7 on the season. In points per game right now, he's averaging 19.6 points per game in IDP 1-2-3 scoring as the linebacker 7. Now, just for perspective, DK Metcalf in PPR is averaging 19.7 points per game, and he's the wide receiver 3. So he's putting himself up there with the big boys as far as the kind of points he's bringing to your team. He's, top 7 linebacker. He's playing lights out really well this year. He's getting all kinds of impact plays, tackles for loss. I said tackles, sacks, tackles for loss, pass defended. He's kind of all over the place. And Roquan Smith, he also played on this Monday night game this last week. Monster game out of him as well. Also had a sack, 3 tackles for loss, I think, something like that. Roquan Smith is, he's everything we thought he was when he got drafted. He had a little bit of a rough season last year, but he's really solidified himself as a floor and a ceiling play at linebacker position in IDP. He currently sits at the top of the linebacker scoring with 228, and behind him is Devin White with 211, and then in a third is Blake Marcinez with 202 points. So that kind of gives you an idea of the spread he has over the other 2 guys behind him right now. He is on bye this week, but just wanted to give him a little tip of the hat, little props. All right, quickly, let's move to defensive backs. Tracy Walker, back up to his old tricks, 41% of snaps. My note here just says ugh. I don't. You can play him, but he's like a 2-3 right now as far as defensive backs go, and honestly, it's not looking good. He could be hurt, I've heard. It's just not a situation you want to be a part of right now. Once Matt Patricia finally leaves, and if he is hurt and he's recovered, he's still a great safety and a great player to play in IDP defensive back wise. But until this gets sorted out, he's not what you wanted him to be this year. When he's on the field, he's still good, but you can't trust it. Kyle Duggar, talk about can't trust it. Kyle Duggar played 85% of snaps this last week. My note here says LOL fuck in all caps. So I don't want to tell you with Kyle Duggar, this guy is in, he's out, he's upside down, he's hurt. I drafted him all over the place. He's sitting on taxi squads. I haven't had him in lineups in some deeper leagues this year. Hasn't really worked out yet. Of course, this last week was probably the first week I think I benched him everywhere. And of course, it was the week he actually led the team in tackles, but I don't even want to get into that. So Kyle Duggar, I don't know. I don't know if you can trust it or not. You could very well be looking at a situation where he comes out and plays 25% of snaps this next week. I just don't know with the Patriots. I don't trust it. But, I mean, dynasty-wise, you like where he's at in the situation he is because you assume that once he gets the trust of that team, because they spent the draft capital on him and because he is supposed to, this athletic freak and he doesn't, he's a good football player, you have to assume that once he is given that role, turned over that role, he should be highly productive. So he's still a guy you want in dynasty, which is where I have him mostly. But for redraft or as a plug-and-play, kind of like a streaming defensive back, you're playing with fire. And then Cameron Curl, Washington football team. This guy came in. He's been filling in for Landon Collins. Last 2 weeks, he had 11 tackles and a sack. And 2 weeks ago, and this last week, he had 9 tackles and a sack. He's playing really well. He's playing better than Landon Collins was playing. Maybe it's just because he's new to the team. Maybe he's trying to prove something. But he's out there. He's playing very well. He's a guy you can go pick up and stream pretty much confidently right now. I'd much rather have him than Kyle Duggar, for instance, or Tracy Walker, the two guys I just brought up. So that is pretty much all of my news and notes and updates. I guess quickly also, it's important to note Joey Bosa, concussion protocol. He's still in the concussion protocol. That's not good. Tomorrow, I assume we'll either hear he got unlimited or he's probably going to get ruled out. If he's still concussed and can't get through the protocol, I would be a little bit concerned because it's been multiple weeks now, I believe. I think this is the second week he might be facing timeout. So that could be a little cumbersome as a dynasty owner, as a manager right now at this point in the season. I mean, it's week 11. You need guys like this in your lineup. You don't want to be sitting there in a must-win game with one of your best players on your bench. So hopefully by the time you hear this, he's in and everything's capiche. But he'll be a little lower on my rankings right now because I'm kind of sketched out by the whole situation. He's usually in my top 3 pretty much weekly at the defensive line position. But this week, like I said, he will be just a tad lower. So let's just go ahead and hop into it. Probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today, guys. Going to quickly breeze through this, kind of get you through my top 12. If you guys have any questions, comments, hit me up, like I said, on Twitter. Leave comments on the YouTube video, all that good stuff. So for week 11, my top 12 defensive line players this week are Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, Stephon Tuitt, Cameron Jordan, Brian Burns, Chase Young, Demarcus Lawrence, Brandon Graham, Montez Sweat, Cam Hayward, Jason Pierre-Paul, and then Joey Bosa, like I said there. So, sorry guys, give me 1 second. So Myles Garrett, obviously he's the number 2 defensive lineman on the season behind only TJ Watt. He gets Philadelphia this week, which you really love. Carson Wentz's line is very banged up. Carson Wentz loves to turn the ball over. I'm not sure what his fumble status is for the season, but I know he leads the league in sacks and interceptions. So this is a nightmare scenario for Carson Wentz, and this is a perfect storm for any Myles Garrett IDP fantasy owner. So you love to see this. Should be a good game. I expect Garrett to get home for his usual at least a sack. And if you have any of the other defensive linemen on the Browns, they could definitely be guys you can stream in this week. Aaron Donald comes in at number 2. Like I said, he had a down week this last week. A lot of guys had a down week this last week. It wasn't just Aaron Donald by any stretch of the imagination. 1 second. Okay, they play the Buccaneers. not a perfect matchup, but again, it's Aaron Donald. He's at number 2 for a reason. So I'm tired of doubting him because every time I doubt him, he goes out and blows up. And every time you kind of gas him up and he kind of let you down. But that's the nature of the defensive line position. You don't take these super studs like Aaron Donald out of your lineup. Even if he's playing the best offensive line in the league, at pass protection, you still play Aaron Donald very confidently. Stefan Tuitt, similar situation with him. He this week gets the Jags. I don't know who they're rolling out at quarterback right now, honestly. Who is that guy? Luton? So he should be in some big trouble. Speaking of which, again, if you are on sleeper, TJ Watt is my number 1 guy again this week. He's usually he was my number 1 guy last week. In Fantasy Pros, he won't show up there. He'll be in my linebacker section, but just, kind of an aside. Cam Jordan having a little bit of a down season, but he gets the Falcons. Matt Ryan gets sacked plenty. So I like Cam Jordan to get home this week, especially in a divisional game. Brian Burns has been playing really well. The sacks have not been coming necessarily, but he gets a good matchup this week. The Lions are rolling out a backup quarterback. I think Stafford might play, but he's got something wrong with his thumb, I believe, like a torn ligament or a broken thumb or something. So that dude's a mess. He's busted up. So even if he plays, I think it's going to be a little bit sloppy. So I expect Brian Burns to get out there and get after it. Demarcus Lawrence, I have him at 7. He's playing really well this season. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. Playing really well. Bounce back season that, we kind of hope would happen early in the season. Did not look like it was happening, but it kind of shows you, there is something to be said about patience and sticking with your guys. I've stuck with Jabril Peppers, and it's panned out really well for me. I did not stick it out with Demarcus Lawrence where I had him, and I've kind of bit me in the butt the spots that I did get rid of him. But, you live and you learn. And I'm happy for everyone that does have Demarcus Lawrence because he's playing really well this year. He gets the Vikings this week. I can see Kirky Boy dropping a couple on the ground. So that should be a fun one to watch. Brandon Graham coming in at 8. Like I said earlier, he gets the Rams, so that'll be a good matchup. Goff doesn't necessarily get sacked a whole lot, but Brandon Graham's playing probably some of his best football of his career, especially on the actual stats. So should be a big game for him this upcoming week. Or wait, I'm sorry. He plays the Browns, not the Rams. But, similar situation. Again, the argument's the same. Brandon Graham's playing basically the best football of his career. He's going to close in on double-digit sacks this season pretty easily, I think. So you're playing him. Montez Sweat, like I said earlier, he's a guy that I just love this season. He's really had that second-year breakout that you want, and he gets Joe Burrow, who's the second most sacked quarterback in the league this week. So I expect that to be good. Cam Hayward, like I said earlier, Steelers get the backup quarterback for the for the not so surging Jaguars. So, like I said, I like all these defensive linemen for Cleveland. I like all these defensive linemen for the Steelers this week a lot, and for Washington as well. Then Jason Pierre-Paul, can't leave him out of the top 12, and against the Rams. And then I got Joey Bosa at 12, hoping he plays. A little worried about him, but we'll see how that goes. So check back with the rankings, and see if he's in or out, and see if if he doesn't play. I'm not sure who's right on the outside of 12. It's probably like Shaq Barrett or Darius Smith or somebody. I don't have my Fantasy Pros pulled up right in front of me, guys. If you're on the YouTube, I'm just using my my graphics today. So we are going to transition from the defensive line players. I'll read them back really quick for anybody on the pod stream. Top 12, Myles Garrett, 1, Aaron Donald, 2, Stephon Tuitt, 3, Cameron Jordan, Brian Burns, Chase Young, Demarcus Lawrence, Brandon Graham, Montez Sweat, Cam Hayward, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Joey Bosa. So let's move to the linebackers. Linebackers this week, number 1, the king himself, Darius Leonard. Number 2, the old king, Bobby Wagner. 3, Devin White. 4, Levante David. 5, Jalen Smith. 6, Demario Davis. 7, Zach Cunningham. 8, Eric Kendricks. 9, Miles Jack. 10, Jayon Brown. 11, Jordan Hicks. And 12, Foyesade Olakun. So I'm not going to say anything about Darius Leonard and Bobby Wagner. You play them. They're the best linebackers in the league. I'm not going to say anything about Devin White and Levante David. They're the next 2 best linebackers in the league right now, honestly, in my opinion. That's it. They're, the Rams are a run-heavy team, so you love that for Levante David and Devin White. Packers also run heavy, but also just possess the ball a lot. So that could be a good matchup for Darius Leonard. And then Bobby Wagner, this is a Thursday night game. Another team that plays a lot of snaps, the Arizona Cardinals. So there should be plenty of tackle opportunities for him. So yeah, Jalen Smith, we'll circle down to him. I know the Cowboys, they've missed having two good linebackers. Well, and we thought when we got, Leighton Vander Esch back, we would have two good linebackers. But Jalen Smith is not playing his best football this year. Yeah, he's putting up a lot of good stats, but he is missing tackles. He's misdiagnosing plays. It's kind of sucks, but for IDP purposes, he gets the Vikings. This is going to be a run-heavy game. We saw what Roquan Smith did on Monday Night Football against this run-heavy game that the Vikings have as that middle linebacker. I expect, he had a 35-point game, 13 tackles, 3 for a loss. I expect Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch to have good games this next week. Jalen Smith being the guy that I want to play there just because, he has a longer track record of the production. Demario Davis gets the Falcons, another team, runs a lot of plays. Demario Davis is one of the best linebackers in the league. He gets sacks. He gets tackles for loss. He doesn't just get tackles. One thing he probably doesn't get as many tackles as you'd like at the end of the day, but he makes up for it in the impact plays. And as much as I love me some Todd Gurley, top 10 running back this year in PPR, don't throw no shade on my boy. He doesn't rush for a lot of yards. So that tells me that he gets plenty of carries, though. That tells me Demario Davis should be in line for a couple of tackles for loss this next week. So don't be shocked if he ends the game with 2-3 tackles for loss. Zach Cunningham, Zach Cunningham is a machine. He's a tackling machine. I love him. Eric Kendrick, similar situation, a little bit of a down week this last week. There is a case to be made for having Eric Wilson higher here. I could probably if I'm being completely honest with myself, I probably should have Eric Kendricks a little bit higher, probably be in this top 12, or not Eric Kendricks, Eric Wilson. But both these Minnesota linebackers are great. Eric Kendricks being the main guy, the guy who's been in the longest track record of success. Again, similar kind of Jalen Smith. Miles Jack, another guy that's, kind of a longer track record of success. Joe Schobert has not been doing the IDP numbers that we'd hoped in Jacksonville. Miles Jack has, though. He seems to be back from that injury fully healthy. Before he went onto that had that injury to his ankle, he was a top 5 linebacker. So he's back up to his old tricks. Plug him in as a linebacker 1. Jayon Brown, Jordan Hicks. Again, not the sexiest, flashiest names on the best defenses in the league, but they are about as tried and true as it gets as far as low-end linebacker ones come. Jordan Hicks, don't want to throw no shade on him, finished last season as the number 1 linebacker, so not a low-end guy. He can put up some big boy numbers. And then Olakun, I have him ahead of Deion Jones because while he doesn't have as many points as Deion Jones does on the season, he has missed a lot of snaps. He went out of that one game after 20 snaps. I believe in week 3, and then he missed a week with a hamstring injury. In points per game, he has about 3 more points per game scored on the season than Deion Jones. So that's why he's ahead of Deion Jones. Deion Jones also hasn't hit double-digit tackles yet this season. I know he has been playing better, and I know he does have some points behind his name, but he still hasn't got up there in that area. Olakun has 2 double-digit tackle games, as well as multiple forced fumbles, as well as sacks. He does everything Deion Jones does, plus a little bit more. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I have Olakun ahead of him. So I do, right there. You're looking at it if you're on the YouTube. So those are my top 12 linebackers. I'll read them off again real quick for anybody on the pod feed. Darius Leonard, Bobby Wagner, Devin White, Levante David, Jalen Smith, Demario Davis, Zach Cunningham, Eric Kendricks, Miles Jack, Jayon Brown, Jordan Hicks, and Foyesade Olakun. So, use this time real quick. Say, appreciate the IDP Army. I appreciate everybody that's listening right now. The season is winding down, so I know a lot of you will probably, go back to your, some of your other hobbies, or maybe look away from your teams for a little while. Won't that listen to the same pods for a bit? I get it. I do the same thing in the off season hits. Take a little breather. But I want you guys to know we'll still be here. I'll still be here putting up content. I'm hoping at least once a week on either this channel or the Dynasty Nerds YouTube channel. So, when you come back looking for information, like breaking down the top 10 or 20 wide receivers, or who had the most impact plays, or, what teams had the highest pace of play, and who was giving, the most tackles this season, and whose dynasty stock is up, whose dynasty stock is down. what's going on in the IDP community, what's going on with trends and players and all that stuff. It will be here waiting for you. So just want you to know, come back, check it all out. Don't check out completely this season. We have lots of good football ahead of us. And when the off season comes and you do take your break, come back. I'll be here. This stuff will still be rolling on the channel, on the feed, and on the Dynasty Nerds website. You already know what it is. So let's go to the defensive backs for week 11, and I'll get y'all out of here. So number 1, Budda Baker. Number 2, Jamal Adams. Number 3, Jeremy Chinn. Number 4, Jesse Bates. Number 5, John Johnson. Number 6, Justin Simmons. Number 7, Khari Willis. Number 8, Chuck Clark. Number 9, Ronnie Harrison. Number 10, Daniel Sorensen. Number 11, Harrison Smith. And number 12, Keanu Neil. We got Jordan Poyer on a bye week this week. You probably know that if you have Stephon Diggs or if you have Devin Singletary or if you have Josh the Goat Allen. So if you're on the IDP side, Jordan Poyer is the number 1 defensive back on the year. This is his bye week, so he won't be in this week. Budda Baker will be in this week. He is the number 1 guy for me this week. Jamal Adams, number 2, finished number 1 last week. Budda Baker has 2 overall number 1 finishes on the season. Only player with that. So these 2 guys they're the kingpins. You're looking at the king and the queen, Budda Baker and Jamal Adams, except they're both kings. So they're the top of the list. I know Jordan Poyer has a few more points on the season, but he also has played a lot more games. So Jeremy Chinn at 3, playing really well. You'll want to watch. He played this last week, and he had a half decent game. But he did have an injury, so I don't know if he's still nursing that at all or not. But you want to monitor that. But he's been playing very well. He's playing linebacker snaps as a defensive back. So again, I say this every week. He's a top play. Jesse Bates, number 4. He is the number 4 defensive back on the season. He's got 158 points. His last 3 games are 20 points, 32 points, 3 points. Okay, that one hurt, but then 19 and 19. So this guy is basically over the last 3 weeks averaging like 20 plus points, 4 weeks. So he's incredible, tackle monster. He gets pass deflections. And who does he play this week? I think the Chargers. He gets Washington this week, which Washington's been pretty good to defensive backs. Again, it is Jesse Bates. He's probably the most underrated IDP defensive back asset that exists right now. So grab him up if you can. John Johnson hasn't been having the most dynamic season, but with Taylor Rapp going out, with these linebackers kind of being a little bit of a hodgepodge this season, Mike Kaiser has not been the world beater he was to start the season. I still believe John Johnson is probably the best IDP asset to own there, besides my man Aaron Donald long term. So I still believe in John Johnson. He's got 125 points on the season. That's the same as Antoine Winfield. It's only 10 points less than Jeremy Chinn at the end of the day. So he's not too far down there. Your top end guys right now, like I said, Jordan Poyer, number 1, he's got 198 points on the season. So when you get down to your low end line DB2s, but have been consistently producing for you. There's nothing wrong with the numbers that John Johnson's put up. 16, 2, 11, 18, 12, 14, 23, 22. He hasn't popped in a while. So he could be due for a pop game, actually. He's had 2 double-digit tackle games this season. He's due for another one of those 2 against Tampa Bay. I like him this week a lot. So that's why he's in there pretty high. Justin Simmons, another guy I really like this season. He's an impact player on the field in real life. He's just one of the better safeties in the league. He doesn't even have a double-digit tackle season. But, again, he's got another season with multiple interceptions. He's got 3 on the season. He's kind of known as a ball hawk. He had 4 interceptions in 2019. In 2018, he had 3 interceptions. So he gets multiple interceptions every year. He's doing that again. He gets tons of pass deflections. He's one of the best coverage defensive backs or safeties in the league. So love me some Justin Simmons. I got him pretty high up there. And not usually a big Broncos fan because y'all know I'm a Chiefs guy. But I thought that uniform, if you were watching on YouTube, this graphic I got up here, I thought it was pretty crisp. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna show a little love to my man out there in the Mile High City. 7, we got Khari Willis. Khari Willis has been playing really good. He's a guy kind of touted in the offseason as a dynasty buy for sure. And I thought he might be worth something like, I think I said yes to somebody this offseason. If you can get him for a third, I would do that. I know there's an actual occurrence I'm referring to if you want to dig through all my tweets, but I know I kind of didn't really get into it with an IDP personality, but he said something about Kari Willis not being worth anything. And I was like, yo, like a third from like 2023, like I would definitely go get Kari Willis for that. Like I'd give me the points. In his last 4 games, 23 points, 15 points, 17 points, 13 points. Kari Willis has turned into a little stud out here. So if you can still get a Kari Willis for a third, and if somebody tells you that's a bad idea, we're not sure I would be taking advice from them. But Kari Willis is going to be a good play this week for sure. And like I said, if you can get him in Dynasty going forward, that's what you want to do. But he gets Green Bay. They should be running plenty of plays. Chuck Clark, pretty solid this year. He got the contracts, which I really love him in Dynasty. There are a lot of high-level producers on this team. The Baltimore Ravens at defensive back, he being one of them. But these guys get blitzed a lot. Multiple forced fumbles for Chuck Clark, multiple fumble recoveries, over a sack. He's an impact player as well as a tackle guy. Tackles haven't been super high the last few weeks, 7, 2, 2, 3, but because he's an impact player, getting tackles for loss, getting pass deflections, getting points other places, it's not the end of the world that he doesn't put up 8 tackles a week. Like, you don't have to have that in IDP. You can, and if that's if somebody tells you that and that's how to play, that's fine. You won't hear that here though. I'm looking for production. I'm looking inception, production within production. I'm looking for those impact plays. Ronnie Harrison, I love Ronnie Harrison this week. I'll tell you why. I actually said something today on Twitter about this. He gets to play. The Browns are playing the Eagles. Carson Wentz, most interceptions in the league, most sack quarterback in the league. Ronnie Harrison's been blitzing a lot. He's been, they traded him there. It took him a little while to get acclimated. Then he got injured. I think he had a concussion or something, but he's been playing very well the past couple of weeks. And he gets a cushy matchup with, like I said, old boy Carson Wentz. So if there was ever a situation where a guy was going to make a big impact play and, the odds were stacked up like that was going to happen, it's going to be this week. So, yeah, I'm looking here. Ronnie Harrison 3 weeks ago had 9 tackles, a sack, an interception. 2 weeks ago, he had 10 tackles, 6 this last week. So, yeah, he should be locked and loaded as a top 10 guy this week. I'm excited to see what he can do with this new team. He's a young talent in the league. He's only 23 years old. So, yeah. Daniel Sorensen, DB, he was DB5 on the season before the bye week. He's dropped a couple of spots, but he's the defensive back you want to own right now for the Chiefs. Love my honey badger. Love Juan Thornhill long term, but right now Daniel Sorensen at 29 years old, he's helping this team in a lot of ways. And he helped them. I say this all the time on the show. He helped them big time last year down the stretch in the playoffs. He's a big reason we won some of those playoff games that got us to the Super Bowl. He's a playmaker, and he's been trusted with snaps this year to be a full-time player, and he's produced very well for IDP and real football. So I love to see that as a Chiefs fan. I love it. Harrison Smith, he's another guy that's kind of been surging back, kind of saying F you to the IDP community. We kind of all wrote him off for dead because he started off the season pretty slow. But last 3 weeks, he's really popped off. 13 points, 13.8 points, 27 points, 16 points last 2 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks before that, he was 4-4-4. So you were probably benching him coming out of his bye. Or I know you were tempted to, but if you stuck with him the last 3 weeks, he's given you almost 50 points. So kudos to you if you stuck with him. If not, it's been probably tough to watch him score these points. But he's got a good stretch coming down. Carolina, Dallas, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. You're still going to play Harrison Smith every week as a defensive back 1. And then this is the first for me. I haven't had Keanu Neil in my top 12 before, but I like the matchup this week in particular. And I'm coming around to Keanu Neil just in general more. I feel like this overall team has been a little bit elevated since they got rid of Dan Quinn. He has been healthy, playing most of the snaps. He had his first double-digit tackle game a couple of weeks ago. I tweeted something about that. It was his first double-digit tackle game since 2017, but he hit it. That was a 32-point game for him. He's trailed off the last couple of weeks, 17 points, 8 points against Denver. But he gets New Orleans. They're very good. They're a very linebacker-friendly team. They run a lot of plays. They run the ball a lot. But we also know they throw the ball a lot to Alvin Kamara. They like those short intermediate routes. That's middle of the field. That's Keanu Neil territory. So I expect him to to rack up some points. And we get Jameis this week. So, again, kind of like Carson Wentz, the turnover probability in that game is really good. I still think Jameis is an obvious play. I do not understand why people say things like, well, I can't play Jameis because he's going to throw interceptions. So what? Okay, minus 1 point in most fantasy leagues. Okay, big deal. I mean, he throws 3 of them. That's still -3. Now he's down, he has to score more. He always scores more than it matters. It's negligible. -1, -2 points. And we're not going to play a player because he's going to rush backward. I mean, are you going to play not play a running back because he gets tackled for a loss a lot more? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, Jameis Winston, I'm on a tangent right now. I wish I could get on sometimes. But Jameis Winston is, he'll throw an interception, but that's -1 point. He's going to go out there and make that up on his very next 25-yard completion, just like that, because that's what he does. So I'm telling you to play Jameis Winston this week. I'm not an offensive fantasy guru. I don't usually peddle those wares, but I'll peddle that one. You should be playing Jameis Winston against Atlanta with a Sean Payton-led offense, with all those weapons and all those toys in that offensive line. Shoo-wee! Give me that. Jameis gonna go out there and make himself some money. All right, I have one more little tidbit I want to go over, some trade talk here. This is a new segment. I will make this brief. I had a question today from a guy, asked me about what the value of Landon Collins was as a trade player, trade piece, whatever you want to call it, to acquire, or what's a fair value. Something I've been doing a lot more lately when it comes to IDP trades is I convert them in my head through their value in picks. So I have a list right here on my whiteboard, which if you're on Twitter or YouTube, you can't see because it's my secret, but secret knowledge. But I got a list of guys and, they're tiered off. And I'm like, these are the guys I would give a single first for. These are the guys that I would give a first plus for. These are the guys I'd give a single second. These are the guys I'd give a second, a second plus for. And once I get to that kind of second, 1 to 2 second area, you kind of get to where most of your real, you kind of figure out what the value of a player is. So if I'm like, okay, this guy's worth a second, then when you're like, okay, offense wise, what player do I want? You just convert. You say, okay, who's worth a second right now? Okay, that's my conversion point. So anyway, what I'm going to try to tell you, that was a long-winded way of saying when I thought about what Landon Collins was worth in an IDP league, start full 11 guys, you got to start 1 or 2 safeties. I kind of landed on the idea that Landon Collins was worth a single second. That's where my head is. And so to give you a kind of a frame of reference and what that means in my dynasty rankings right now, he's my defensive back 6. So there's probably 2 or 3 guys right above him that I would value similarly to that. And I believe right now my number 1 defensive back overall is Budda Baker. And he is, I would put him at a 2+ second kind of guy. Just, so there's some trade, I'm going to try to do more trade talks. I get a lot of trade questions. I figured that was a good one because, a lot of people are probably trying to make moves right now. If your trade deadline hasn't passed, Landon Collins is a big name in Dynasty and in IDP in general and in football. I mean, played at Alabama, was really good. I mean, he's a really good safety, one of the best ones in the league. So you don't want to undersell him. And he's still pretty young. I think he's 25, 26. Big injury, yes, but still the talent, the ability, the points. I mean, he's still that guy. So what is he really worth? I put a couple polls out last couple of weeks on my Twitter timeline too about Danielle Hunter, another guy who's on IR or hurt, because of another guy who's just hurt right now. And I said a couple months ago, he was easily worth a first plus because he was everybody's number 1 overall, a lot of people's number 1 overall IDP player, but definitely a lot of people's number 1 overall defensive end or defensive line player or whatever you want to call it. But I put out a poll on Twitter to see what his current value was. And the responses I got back, basically the market right now told me Danielle Hunter is currently worth a single first. So Danielle Hunter has definitely dropped down in the value department a little bit. He's kind of on par with, another injured guy who I just alluded to, Landon Collins. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm valuing those guys. You got to ask the market. Everybody's different on everybody's team too in a vacuum. I don't know if he's really going to be worth a second to somebody or not, but for you, I think a second, I think second's a fair price for Landon Collins right now. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And in that same market for Danielle Hunter. So if you're looking for an offensive piece to trade for them, look for who you think is worth around a second, and then kind of use that as your starting point. All right, guys, I'm a sucker. There's some questions over here. I'm going to answer those. I had to drop Tracy Walker. He has really fallen off. When someone else dropped Mike Williams, I needed wide receiver depth. What happened to Tracy Walker? Will he bounce back this year? Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit earlier in the show. If you want to go back and listen to it or not, that's up to you. But his snaps are just falling. It's Matt Patricia. It's injury. You can't trust him right now. He's maybe a low end 2, 3. Long term, still love him. He's still a very good safety. I just hate that situation, and that's true for a lot of people. Their offense and defense, unfortunately. Man, you guys got come on to the Sunday IDP live show, the IDP Army livecast, whatever you want to call it. If you guys have start-sit questions, I got one here real quick. Josh Allen, Cam Jordan, JJ Watt, or Chase Young, pick 2. I'm going to go with Cam Jordan, and I'll take Chase Young. All right, IDP Army, appreciate y'all. Thanks for rocking with me. Leave a rating, leave a review. Love that shit. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm tweeting, I'm fleeting. Find me in the Discord channel, Patreon/all gas. Rage EQ over there in the Destination Debbie. They got IDP channel. I'm hanging out over there. We're chopping it up. We're talking trades and stuff over there. That's actually where I got some of these trade questions I brought up earlier. And then also in the fantasy football chat Discord. That's the official fantasy football community of Discord. Hop on that server. It's awesome over there. I'm in their IDP room as well. Tell a friend about the show. Like, subscribe. All right, I'm out. Good luck. Kick some ass this week. Tell them who sent you.